Hello, welcome to this episode of Stories with Grady. And in this series of Stories with Grady, whenever I have this blue background, is when I'm usually talking about celebrities and their stories, or I'm talking about my own personal stories. And in this video today, I'm going to be talking about literally one of my favorite celebrity stories that I've ever heard, probably my top favorite celebrity story that I've ever heard. And it is about the man who did the voice of Darth Vader, who did the voice of Mufasa, who did the voice of literally all these things that you can look up on Wikipedia. And so I'm going to be exploring not necessarily his big, rich career. I'm going to be talking about the time when he was younger, the time when he was vulnerable, the time before most people knew or recognized his name, James Earl Jones. So before we hop in, let's roll the Stories with Grady intro. So Mr. James Earl Jones, where was he born? He was born in the state of Mississippi. His mother, Ruth, was both a teacher and a maid. And his father was a boxer, a butler, and a chauffeur. He had all those things covered. His father ended up leaving the family and became a stage and theater director in Hollywood and a screen actor as well. It wasn't really till 30 years later when James Earl Jones reconnected with his father and they reconciled. James Earl Jones wasn't really raised by either of his parents. He was raised by his maternal grandparents, and their names were John and Maggie. The location of this place where he grew up was a farm in Jackson, Michigan. And the transition was really hard for James. The transition was so severe, obviously abandoned by his father, not really with his mother. He started developing the stutter, and as he developed the stutter, he started to refuse to speak. And this is a quote from James Earl Jones. He says, "I was a stutterer. I couldn't talk, so my first year of school was my first mute year. And then those mute years continued until I got to high school." So can you imagine going through grade school and going through middle school and going into high school and literally not talking to your friends, not talking to the teachers, not talking to your grandparents because you're a stutterer and you don't want to necessarily talk. And also, it's just become a habit. It's become your way of life. You do not speak. However, in high school, he met an English teacher, and the English teacher's name was Donald. And the English teacher, Donald, realized that James Earl Jones had a very good gift of poetry. James could write poetry. So he might not speak much, but he could definitely write. As they developed this friendship, this teacher-student friendship, James Earl Jones started breaking out of his shell. As he was recognized for his gift in poetry, he started opening his mouth more. Even though it was hard, even though he was vulnerable, even though he had gone all of those years without speaking, he had one single person believe in him. He had one simple person who saw that he had value and in what he did was valuable, and he started to be able to speak. He started to choose to speak. And the way this happened was that Donald urged James Earl Jones to get up in front of the class and read out the poetry that he had written. And here's the reason why I love this story so much. It's because we are able to see that James Earl Jones had such humble beginnings. He wasn't necessarily propped up for fame. He wasn't necessarily propped up for success. He's literally, listen to this. He's known for Mufasa. He's known for Darth Vader. He's known for his voice. But growing up, because of the things he had experienced, because of the transitions he had gone through, because of the trauma that he had sometimes experienced from the different ways he was treated and the different ways he was raised, he chose not to speak. So what would have happened if this man never would have been believed in? What would have happened if James Earl Jones never decided to grow out of that hardship, to never push through, to never get out of his comfort zone and speak that small poetry to the small class? He would have never gone to the heights of being one of the most recognizable voices in all of cinematic history. This is just legendary to me because it shows the power and the impact of going from point A to point B and saying, I'm going to develop through this, through thick or through thin, whether it's easier or whether it's hard. I'm going to push through, and I don't necessarily know where my finish line is going to be. I don't know what I'm going to accomplish. I don't know where this path is leading me, but I know that if I never get past this one small hurdle, I'll never be able to do big things. And so James Earl Jones did the hard thing of developing, and he had that one person to believe in him. So I want to wrap up this story in a tight little bow by saying, if you feel like James Earl Jones in his beginning period of life, where you're scared of speaking up, and where you're scared of being seen, and where you're scared of the trauma in your past, and where you're scared of your stutter, and where you're scared of just doing anything other than being in your bubble and not breaking out of it, I want to recommend to you that you try, that you stand up and say, what if I can do big things after I conquer this? What if I overcome this? What is on the other side? What can I push through in order to accomplish my big dreams and my big goals? And you might be looking at the screen and you might be saying, Grady, I don't necessarily have anyone to believe in me. And my point to you is this: why do you think I made this video? I made this video because of people like you who I knew would be watching this, of you on the other side of this screen who have big dreams, who have big goals, or who have even these small inklings of wanting to do something, but feeling like this big hurdle is keeping you from reaching this. Us humans are all very different, but we're all very the same in the fact of, if we decide to overcome something personal, that we can make steps to it. Will we ever be perfect? No. Is James Earl Jones perfect? No. But does he still stutter? No. It didn't happen overnight, but James Earl Jones slowly pushed through it, and he was able to conquer big things because of his slow progress over the years. And that can be you. You can do big things. And if you honestly don't believe that, tell me why you don't necessarily believe that in the comments, because in the long run, if you don't necessarily have any reason that you feel like you can believe in yourself and your abilities and what you can accomplish, I want to hear why, and maybe I'll respond with a video about why I think you might be wrong. Not necessarily to say, oh, screw you, you have potential and you don't even see it. But the point is, I want to give you potentially a different perspective of maybe saying why you maybe should believe in yourself when you don't necessarily see it that way. That's all I really have for this video. I appreciate everyone watching the story, but more than anything, I really appreciate people like James Earl Jones who do the hard things of conquering and are able to look back at their progress 30 years later and say, wow, I've come so far and I've done such big things, and I'm now recognized for the thing that I hid because of my underdevelopment and my self-shame years ago. Thank you for watching. Subscribe for more stories with Grady, and I hope to see you in the next video, and I hope you live a little bit more like James Earl Jones today. Adios.